Thanks, my friend. Great to be with you.
It's always an absolute pleasure, Ted. We appreciate you taking the time. What a monumental day. What a momentous day. I was out today getting some stuff done, and I heard the breaking news about Anthony Kennedy stepping down, the Supreme Court justice. And I guess I wasn't surprised because he's getting up there in age, been on the court for a long time. Did you see this coming? Did you know it was going to happen?
Well, I didn't know, but I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. And when you hear about it, all of a sudden, and you probably could have predicted this before it happened, CNN, MSNBC, others started acting like it was the loss of a huge liberal. This guy was appointed by President Reagan, and in fact, in the past couple of days, he's been on the constitutional and the conservative side of some pretty major rulings, right?
That's right. And, I had been saying for some time that I thought it was likely that Justice Kennedy would retire this summer. And I will tell you, this day is historic. It is an opportunity to have a profound impact. This nomination could prove to be President Trump's single most important vote.
Right.
The last vacancy, the Neil Gorsuch nomination. That was replacing Justice Antonin Scalia, one of the greatest justices to ever serve on the court. That was, at best, a defensive pick. You're not going to get any better than Scalia, so you hope that you stay with the court as good. Justice Kennedy, on the other hand, has been the pivotal swing vote on just about every 5-4 decision for 31 years.
Right.
And so this is an opportunity. If we get this right, if the president nominates a strong, principled constitutionalist to have an impact in terms of defending the Constitution and Bill of Rights, that could last for generations.
It's Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of the great state of Texas. Let me just throw out some things. When it comes to selecting the next person, he asked you to do it. Do you do it?
It is certainly gratifying. It is humbling to be mentioned in those conversations. But the short answer, Joe, is no.
Okay.
I am very happy in the U.S. Senate, and I'll tell you why. Because a principled federal judge stays out of policy fights, stays out of political fights. If I were ever a judge, that's what I'd do. I don't want to stay out of policy and political fights. I want to be right in the middle of them.
Right.
And every major fight we've got right now, the Senate is the battleground, whether it's cutting taxes or lifting regulations or repealing Obamacare or securing the border or rebuilding our military or standing with Israel. All of those, the Senate is the arena. And I believe I can have a much bigger impact by standing up and fighting for 28 million Texans. So I hope to be a part of confirming 2, 3, 4, 5 principled constitutionalists to the Supreme Court. But personally speaking, I don't want to be one of them.
Let me ask you about Bernie Sanders, your buddy, Bernie Sanders, that you've debated, and he's an interesting dude. He has come out today on Twitter saying that because there's a midterm coming up, that you have to use the same rules that Republicans used when that Merrick person was being nominated by a lame duck Obama. I mean, that's kind of nutty, right? Because Elena Kagan was appointed in 2010, which was a midterm year, as far as I can remember, and you guys on the Republican side took the House of Representatives. So, I mean, that argument's all wet, right?
It's ludicrous. Of course, the Democrats are going to say that the Democrats in the next several months are going to light their hair on fire. They're going to go hysterical. But I am hopeful the president will make a strong nomination of a principled constitutionalist, and I'm confident the Senate will take up the nomination and confirm the nomination in the next couple of months. This fall, before the election, I think we'll have hearings in either September or October. And I'm sure the Democrats will scream that the sky is falling, because the view from the hard left, they want justices who are judicial activists, who are forcing a radical liberal view on America, setting aside the views of the elected legislatures and essentially letting our country be governed by 5 unelected lawyers.
Right.
Now, from you and I, we don't want the same thing on the other side. I don't want to see a conservative Supreme Court. I don't want a court that mandates a conservative policy outcome. I want a court that is faithful to the Constitution and follows the law. And if you want a conservative policy outcome, pass it through Congress, pass it through the legislature. We have, under our constitutional system, a democratic process. It's the American people who should decide contested policy issues, not 5 lawyers in black robes in Washington.
It is Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, the great state of Texas. Some fiery heads are happening now already. The hair is on fire for some on the left. Abortion's going to go away. Gay marriage is going to be overturned. The world is coming to an end, and the sky is falling. I mean, those cases aren't up for reexamination unless, of course, somebody sues and brings a case to the court, right? It's not like you add somebody to the court and then suddenly these decisions go away.
No, that's right. Under Article 3 of the Constitution, it has to be a case or controversy. It has to be a live dispute.
Right.
And one important thing to understand, this issue was front and center before the American people in 2016. This is a major, major reason President Trump was elected. It's a major reason we have a Republican majority in the Senate, is the American people chose between Hillary Clinton promised to nominate left-wing judicial activists to the court.
Right.
She promised to nominate activists, for example, who would vote to overturn the Heller decision, which upheld the individual right to keep and bear arms protected and enshrined in the Second Amendment. Now, the American people said, you know what, we don't want that radical vision, and the American people made a choice. So now we need to deliver on those promises we made, and I will say, I think in many ways the most significant legacy of the first year and a half of the Trump administration has been the strong constitutionalists that have been confirmed, not just to the Supreme Court, but to the appellate courts, to the district courts. That makes an enormous difference for protecting the constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights for Texans and for all Americans. And I think we need to continue following through on those promises.
Ted, to the travel ban, which was upheld, but by the slimmest of margins, which makes no sense. It should have been 9-0. Have you ever seen a case where the court actually says, had any other person done this, we're fine with it, but the fact that he did it, we weren't?
Well, unfortunately, many of the judges on the left are often deeply politicized.
Right.
And so you saw the dissents in the travel ban case. Basically what they said is this is Donald Trump and we don't like Donald Trump.
Right.
And I'll say that if you look historically, Democrats have batted nearly 1,000 with Supreme Court nominees. Just about every judge they put on the Supreme Court votes exactly the way the Democrats want on just about every single case. Republicans, at best, we bat 500. About half of our nominees to the court end up absolute train wrecks and disasters. Many of the most liberal judicial activists.
Why?
Well, part of it is that we've seen presidents in the past who have appointed people that don't have a track record, that don't have a demonstrated pattern of standing and fighting for conservative principles, fighting for the Constitution. So in my view, the single best choice that President Trump could make would be to nominate Senator Mike Lee to the Supreme Court. Mike, I know with an absolute certainty that Mike would be faithful to the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The best choice he could make. There are other choices, Pags. Another choice that I think the president should consider is the United States Solicitor General, Noel Francisco, who argued and won the travel ban case for the president. He's a former clerk to Justice Scalia, would make an excellent justice. And yet another choice that I think should be considered is Judge Jim Ho, a judge in Texas on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. He came as an immigrant, as a one-year-old from Taiwan to American freedom.
Yeah.
He was a former clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas, is a principled constitutionalist. I think all three of those choices would be superb choices for the president to make.
And I remember that it was very important for you that Mike Lee was on that list. So I'm glad to hear you mention that you'd like to see him go. I agree with you on all of those choices. I've got to talk about the border. We keep talking about immigration reform. The House and the Senate are both Republican. People are screaming. You have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Why aren't you doing something? Why isn't the House approving any of this stuff?
Well, the House voted on a number of bills, and they couldn't get the votes to do it. So a lot of what they voted on, I think, didn't make sense.
Yeah.
They saw some broad amnesty proposals there to grant U.S. citizenship to millions of people here illegally. I think that would have been a catastrophic mistake. So I am glad that the House voted it down.
What do you need a bill to look like, Ted, for you to want it?
There are two things that I think we should do this year. Number one, I've been pressing my colleagues that we need to take up a budget reconciliation, which is the vehicle that we use to pass tax cuts.
Right.
It's a vehicle that can't be filibustered, and we should use that to build the wall, to fund and build the wall. We can do that. The Democrats will scream, but if Republicans stand together, we could get that accomplished this year. That's one of the things I'm urging.
Could you do that with 51?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If we do it on budget reconciliation, we don't need 60. We just need 50 Republicans.
Great.
So that's what I think we should do on immigration this year. And then a second thing, there's been a lot of attention focused on this principle, on this issue of separating families.
Right.
And last week, I introduced legislation. I agree with the concerns that just about everyone has raised, that we should not be separating kids from their parents.
Right.
That the right place for kids to be is with their mom and with their dad. Now, the Democrats' solution to that is they want to essentially let everyone go. They want to codify catch and release and to say, well, let's keep kids with their parents, and the way to do that is let all of the illegal immigrants go. That would be a terrible idea. That incentivizes more illegal immigration. So instead, what I introduced is legislation that says kids stay with their parents, but we're going to detain the parents. We're going to process them quickly on expedited proceedings. We can have a humane shelter where the family stays together. The legislation I introduced said, let's resolve this in 14 days. They can make their legal claim. If they have a valid claim for asylum under U.S. law, it should be granted. But if they don't, put them on a plane and send them home, but make it quick, expedited, and follow the law rather than embracing catch and release, which the position of the Democrats right now is simply don't enforce our laws. That's not a responsible position.
And Chuck Schumer has said anything that suggestion that you made and anything like it is dead on arrival. They don't want this done before November. You know that. I know that. The voters know that. They need this to be an issue.
Maybe, Pags. I'm hopeful. I can tell you, so on Monday I sat down and met at length with Dianne Feinstein and with Dick Durbin.
Right.
And they at least say they want to work with me on this.
Okay.
We'll see if they actually are willing to follow through. I've had a number of Democratic senators express a willingness to work together. Now, what I was very clear is if their position is the only way they'll go along is to embrace catch and release, then you know what? We're not going to get this done.
Right.
That's a deal killer. But if they're willing to come together and say, number one, let's keep families together, let's keep kids with parents, and number two, let's enforce the law and not encourage illegal immigration, then we should be able to find common ground and fix this problem. I hope that's what happens. We'll see. I think there are certainly some Senate Democrats that want to see nothing happen so they can demagogue on this issue and use it to campaign. There may be some Senate Democrats willing to work together, and I'm certainly trying to see if they are.
Yeah. Good. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas. Ted, thanks a million.
Thank you, Pat. God bless.